Hey everybody, welcome back to Five Questions with. I'm your host, Dustin Pete. I'm so pumped to have with us for our first culture questions. I'm so pumped to have with us today one of my very best friends, Blake Behr. Now let me tell you about Blake. He doesn't just look good, right? I know we're all like gaga over like how awesome he looks right now and how cool of a space he's in. But let me tell you, it's not all looks. Blake is the president. Period. That's it. He just told me he's the president. Sorry,
That's it.
Joe. He's the president. No, I'm just kidding. He's the president of Ridgeline Electrical Industries and the co-host of Ridgeline Leadership Podcast. He's a published author as well of an incredible book called Uncultured, The Key to Prevent Your Team from Self-Destructing. We're going to talk about that a little bit. He's focused on creating a culture of personal growth and opportunity. He's passionate about empowering others to find and use their unique talents to unlock their potential. After witnessing the effects of toxic workplaces, Blake is determined to redefine the construction industry in creative ways, and that's what he knows and does best. Blake, so pumped to have you on the pod or on the program today. How are you
Yeah,
doing?
thanks for having me, man. Yeah, doing good. Doing good, man. It's technically a Friday today. So
Yes.
this is Vision Day. This is day to like connect with people and
Yeah,
just lean in on all these types of things. So these are my favorite.
I love it. I feel like every time I talk to you on Fridays, you are at the home base layer there.
Mhm.
Is that your Friday move, or how long are you there on Fridays?
Yeah, so I'll
It's
go
not
out
one
and
of the
do a
questions.
lot of meetings and stuff. I mean, it's yeah, this is not one of those questions. 5 is
Yeah.
okay, you're using them. You're using them, Dustin. Throw 'em in.
You only get 5.
How am I doing? You got that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll go out and meet with people,
Hmm.
but I really like to spend my mornings using the best of my energy in times of vision and times of just like what can we create and what can we who needs focus and cultivation and where are these things, because during the week we're constantly going and we're constantly grinding our Fridays and the things that we come up with, we're constantly pushing throughout the week. And
Yeah.
um Steal Like an Artist, what's his name?
Austin Kleon.
Yeah, Love, he says, when we get busy, we get dumb.
Yeah.
And I think just having that time to stop and just not be dumb on purpose is really good. So
Yeah.
that's what my Fridays tend to be. I don't know if they always look the same, but I tend to want to be in a culture and in a place, you're like, oh, you got a cool space or whatever.
Yeah.
It's really just the space that like encourages creativity,
Gotta have it, man.
encourages thinking. Yeah.
Gotta have it. I just blogged about that a few weeks ago about creative space on the website, and it's super, super important. So let's dive right into these 5 questions. You're here for culture because you're the king of culture. I know a handful of people in my life that are just crush it, and you're one of them. So I would love to hear from your perspective. Let's just get down to brass tacks here. Let's start with why. Let's channel our inner Simon Sinek for a moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why?
Thanks, Paul.
Why is the culture of your team so important?
Yeah, that's good. So before I dive into that, I would say that you had a huge effect on me with
Mm,
culture.
mm,
And I got to see you live things in and out with culture in good ways and bad ways. Like it doesn't matter. I got to see when you started preaching creativity and culture to me and putting that into my life, like it just took. And I
mm.
think the thing is, and I heard someone say this one time, it was probably a book. There's no way in hell I'm remembering who. But they said something to the effect that someday someone is going to read the Bible and do everything it says and put everyone to shame. They're just going to believe it, right?
Mm.
And they're just going to put everyone to shame. And the thing I think with culture is I just believe it. Like the first step is just hardcore belief.
Hmm.
And the way you believe anything is try it, test it out, prove it wrong. Like if it's fake, if it's false, it'll fall short. Okay. And so when everyone thinks of things about culture, that tends to be like, oh, that's just fluffy BS that isn't going to really do anything for me. You can't quantify it. You can't give it a dollar figure, which
Yeah.
if you start with those mindsets, the truth is you're right.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
I can tell you that the average turnover rate in my industry is over 60%, but ours is 4%. So, and I've got years to back it up, that same data. So that's a metric. I can
Yeah.
tell you that the average turnover cost to my company is over $14,000 if I lose them within 6 months. And I can tell you that I invest on the front side so I don't lose it on the back side.
Yeah.
So if you believe that culture isn't going to do anything with you, you're right.
Yeah.
But there's so much more. And so
Yeah.
to get back to your question of why is culture important, because I know I just hit a whole bunch of like,
No,
what's
that's
at
great.
stake if you don't.
Yeah, I love it.
I
That's
think you
why
got
it's
to
important.
understand culture and what it is.
Mhm.
So I'll tell you the why here in a second, but I really think we misunderstand culture. I love Peter Drucker's quote that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I love that quote. However, I think it's given this mindset like culture's an animal that needs to be contained. And I don't think that's true.
Mm.
Okay. I don't think culture is some rabid animal that if you don't get a hold of, it's going to destroy everything. I think culture is alive, but I think it's like a garden or a forest. Okay.
Yeah.
It's an environment. Like literally when we talk about, oh, there's the coyote in its natural culture. What are they talking about? Talking
Yeah.
about environment, talking
Yeah.
about its place that it thrives, the place that it's successful,
Yeah.
the place that if it wasn't, it would go elsewhere. Right. Like so culture and trying to bring this back into what is this for your team, because that's where I'm passionate. It's like, what is culture in your organization, in your business, in your team? Culture is the environment that supports the fulfillment of the vision and purpose. It is the growth of the individual and the team, and it is the connection within the team and with them connecting to what they do. Okay, so like high level, it's environment, but it's environment that does really well at growing things.
Yeah.
And so I don't think we can go much deeper until you understand that it isn't alive. Like you gotta, how do you tame culture? You don't. I mean,
Yeah.
you work culture. You get this, cultivate culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's it.
Think of yourself as a farmer, not as a bear, wrangler or tiger wrangler. You're not Tiger King. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So, um, why is culture important? We are going to start with Cynic, because how do you not start with Cynic on why
Yeah.
stuff?
You got to.
Cynic also wrote another book called The Infinite Game, and it is unbelievable. He, when my book, I was so ticked, but like he's going to sell more copies.
Mhm.
But when I wrote my book, it was like right at the same time he came out with The Infinite Game, and I was like, oh man, like he got all the good stuff. Now I'm just going to quote him a whole bunch. I got to rewrite this. I was
Yeah.
furious, but it made it better. So he talks a lot about separating your business or your organization into things like resources and then things like will, right?
Mhm.
And will being culture, being the passion, the purpose behind why you do something.
Yeah.
And so when we think of business only as resources, which we tend to do, we think of the thing we're doing, the product, the processes, that's all that's important. We forget about people. And Simon is so good at saying, in any business that is going to last, it's got to at least minimum standard be 49% resource, 51% will. And
Mhm.
it's because I call this the Ferrari analogy. So you could have a Ferrari that you spend a relentless amount of time developing. You get the best parts, like your aftermarket taking this, even a Ferrari to the next level, right? Like you are pimping my ride, right? You are doing it. That Ferrari is not going to win a race with a clunker that has a driver.
Mhm.
Okay. That Ferrari is just a paperweight without something that is controlling and driving it. And business owners, leaders forget this all the time because we get focused on the end result, the quantitative end result of
Yeah.
got to get the thing done. And we miss out on the fact that there are people driving this,
Yeah.
right? You're a race fan, aren't you?
Love it. NASCAR.
Yeah. I was watching a documentary recently. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called Cars, by Pixar, I think. And thought I'd drop that one.
That's awesome.
Like
Documentary.
pre pre-epiphany, Lightning McQueen is what I think most businesses are. That
Mm.
all their concern is themselves and their focus and the end result and getting the trophies, and that's it. But post Epiphany, Lightning McQueen was one who realized as he was about to cross the finish line of the race he had dedicated his whole life to getting to, that truly and true success is deeper.
Mm.
And like he understood it was the team, it was the people involved, it was the people that mattered. And yeah, his like he lost his whole crew tree. I'm speaking of this like it's a true documentary right now.
Yeah, yeah.
He lost his whole crew team the first, in the beginning of the movie because he was like, "Oh, I just am this good and this is who I am." And um it's so silly, but Pixar's got it. This is where things
Yeah,
are.
they understand.
We are focused so much on creating something that's going to be great and last, and we don't realize that it's the people that make it great. It's the teams that make it great. When we do it at a level where your team is connecting to what they're connecting to why they're doing it, and they're doing the thing that they feel like they are naturally born to do at the highest level, that's success and
Mm.
that's scalable and that's long term.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it matters so much is it matters because you're only going to be able to do as good as you can do with your thing. That's it.
Yeah.
If you want to
Yeah.
do it by yourself, be a subcontractor. Okay. But if you want to create something that is going to affect change and change environment, change industries, change ideas, do it with people because
Mm.
that's where it's going to happen.
Man, that's so good. Speaking of people, that leads me to my next question. Uh, this it could sound like a pretty simple answer,
Mhm.
or a dumb question, but I do think it's important that we ask now that we know why culture is so important. Who do we get involved? Who contributes to the culture of the team?
Mm. So if we think of it like environment, then I think the simple answer is anyone. Anyone who is in the environment must know what environment they're in, right? So, um, this is kind of like it's kind of like the polar bear, right? Like I've talked about this, I think, with you before. The polar
Hmm.
bear mindset of like it isn't about creating the easiest culture. It's not about creating this environment that is no work and no accountability. Like, because if you think about polar bear, like it swims miles and miles a day, only 5% of its like hunts are successful.
Hmm.
And it is negative 32 degrees all time, pretty much. Like, and I might be wrong there. Please don't fact check me on that. But anyway, that's its culture. That's its environment. It fits that environment. So
Yeah.
who contributes is everyone. Everyone who walks in to your field that you are growing is either going to affect it in a good way or a bad way. There's not really a neutral way here. Okay. Like your culture, your environment, like if you're hiring someone to come and join the team to clear rocks so that seed can grow or to till soil or to water or to whatever, like you've got to have the right people. Now, I don't think it's just who in the sense of like personality, because I think there's a tendency to want to define culture as personality. And that you got to be really careful there. Cause I think
Mm.
a lot of personalities that come into a business or an organization make it what it is. Like it's really fun to have difference of thinking and different experiences. And you don't always want to have the white middle class Republican. Okay. You want to be able to switch things up a little and you want good personality that will challenge the growth. So it's not personality, but this is where core values have to be just bred so true because there can be many personalities who believe part of our culture is we, not me,
Hmm.
right? There are massive amounts of personalities that can believe that. But when someone doesn't believe that, that can hurt. That can hurt pretty bad.
Yeah, for sure.
I think and not to like keep expounding this, but I
No,
also
you
think that part of it is not just the who, it's the mindsets we have about things and ideas and what can happen and not happen. Um, so part of that, I think of, and there was this guy, his name was Robert Rosenthal. Okay. He was a Harvard professor and he wanted to prove this test that was called the Harvard test of inflected acquisition. Okay. And so this was back in the 60s. And so what he did was he went into these elementary schools, and the whole purpose of the test was to highlight the people who were going to be like the people who would be the next generation of really successful people and
Mm.
people who would change the world. And so he came up with this test and he went in and he gave this test to everyone. And these fourth graders did this thing, or fifth, whatever. They did this test, and he would go, okay. And he would go talk to the teacher and say, hey, we're going to do this test later on in the year, but um, Johnny, Sally, David, they scored top of their class. They were amazing. We want to be able to prove this. So as a control, we've got things set up. You cannot tell them anything. Okay. You can't talk about this. Don't tell their parents. We need this control for this to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the end of the year, they tested again. Johnny, Sally, David, still top, right? The thing is, it was a fake test. Okay. It was just an IQ test.
Yeah.
And all that Rosenthal did was slap a cover page on the thing. And it was like, he came back. What was true though, is it was Johnny, Sally, and David the second time. The first time it wasn't.
Hmm.
And so what he was actually trying to prove was that our subconscious mindsets about people affect people.
Yeah.
And so when you have people in your culture and you don't care about culture and you think that people are just a means to your end, you will get those kind of people. You're going to attract those kind of people.
Yeah.
And so you're never going to have a good who in your organization if that's your focus.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I'm trying to process everything you said because it's so good. So we talked about why it's important. We talked about who should be contributing. So how often should this be a topic? And really, what I'm asking is how important should it be? We know it is important. So how often should you, as even if you're not the leader, even if you're just middle management, how often should you be discussing culture with your team?
So there's a simple answer, but I think that there's a better answer. I
Sure.
think the simple one is all the time, but I want to qualify that. When you start to taste and see what culture can do for your organization, and really more so how you can use culture in the right ways to get the better response and help your turnover rate and
Yeah.
empower people, when you can do that, um, you're going to be really excited, just like anything new you try, and you're going to talk about it nonstop. That's good. Don't at all pull back from that,
Hmm.
but speak about it as authentically as you can.
Yeah.
Okay. And what I would better say is highlight when you see good culture.
Yeah.
Don't try to be like, hey guys, remember, culture is important. And then someone messes something up, because this is where rubber meets the road. If someone messes something up and you've got a core value that defines your culture as taking risks, and someone took a risk and failed, and you were like, what the hell's your problem? Blah, 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 blah. And you go off the end. And then the next minute you're like, remember guys, we take risks. Nobody's taking risks. You just diminish the ability to highlight your culture.
Yeah. For sure.
What do you do in moments like that? Because I'm going to promise you, it's going to happen. You're going to screw up. Own it. Okay. You
Yeah.
want your culture to be a place that people can do that, and you screw up. Be like, guys, I can't believe it. I went against one of the most core values that we have because I was upset and I was emotional. That's on me. Keep taking risks. Okay.
Yeah.
We don't want to keep making the same mistake twice, but you took a risk. We need to highlight that. Way to go. You failed. No problem. What did we learn? And when you start creating that, you create this environment that allows people to do the thing you say you do. Okay.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think you should do this all the time. You should highlight these things. I don't know your organization. I don't know what you're a part of, but if you're not celebrating people and like giving them accolades for doing the things that you say are really important,
Right.
then it's not going to foster people to want to do that. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's probably
Yeah.
what I'd say about that.
Yeah. I often say that culture is defined by what you allow to be okay.
Mm,
I think a lot of times
yeah,
that
that's good.
I think a lot of times on this discussion of culture, we think that we do have to talk about it all the time. And I would say in the beginning, as you're rolling out, this new, maybe you're trying to make a big shift in the company, you definitely should talk about it all the time. And I'm not saying stop talking about it, but at the end of the day, we all know that actions speak louder than words,
Yep.
right? That's not a new epiphany.
Yeah,
And
whoa.
so, but we don't, but we live as if words mean more than actions.
Hmm.
And so culture is defined not by necessarily a set of values. I mean, that yes, that's the guardrails.
Yeah.
That's the reminder of don't forget who we are here. Don't forget who we said we're going to be. Let's be authentic and true to that. But
Yeah.
culture is more defined, I think, by what you allow to happen. And so in
Yeah.
those moments you were talking about, if someone messes up and you ignore it, or someone does it really well and you ignore it, that's
Mhm.
now your culture.
Yeah.
Culture doesn't Culture is going to happen whether whether you're steering that ship or not.
Mm.
So you might as well steer the ship,
Yeah.
right? Let's
And
talk
man,
about steering.
that's can
Go
I
ahead.
can I say one thing to that?
Go for it.
Because that's such a good point. Culture being those guardrails, or core values being those guardrails, rather. Core values are not the thing that create the culture. They're the thing that show what's already there. Okay.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you're like they're the street signs that are telling you you got a 90-degree turn coming up here and you need to make sure you're able to take that. So slow the heck down. Or like, hey, here's a guardrail because you're going around this mountain bend and we don't want you to go off because that part of the culture is pretty rough. So,
Mhm.
I really like that. I think it's the things that define what the culture already is.
Yeah. So if it's going to happen, whether we steer the ship or not, every sane person would say, well, I don't want to just let it happen. I want to have some say on what this thing is, what the culture of our team is. I'm not okay with it just happening. So my last two questions are going to get a little more practical with you. So if we're going to take charge of the ship, we've decided we're not going to let it happen anymore. We're gonna control the culture. We're going to steer the culture in the right direction of our team. Where's the best place to start for someone wanting, whether they're the leader or not? Where's the best place to start for someone who wants to increase the quality of their team culture?
Yeah. So I thought about this a lot. Like when we started our company, I started because I was in a situation that was so toxic, and
Yeah,
Dustin was around me when it was happening. I mean, it was ugly.
yeah,
Um, I knew I wanted to create a place that people felt empowered to do their thing.
mm.
And believe me, construction is not the industry you would normally think that to be. Because construction is like,
Get in, get out.
oh yeah, assholes elbows. That's all it is.
Hmm.
And we wanted to change that game. We wanted to change the name of that. And so when we did this, we looked at like, what do people value? Right?
Mm.
Like what does every person value? And that's a hard answer. Like so I knew that's not the place I should start.
Yeah.
What we looked at was what are the top reasons people leave a company?
Hmm.
And so that's where we started. And the first one, there are three reasons. Like there are a lot of reasons, there are a lot of levers, but there are three that make up over 80% of why people leave. And so we
Hmm.
were like, let's just focus on those three.
Yeah.
And so the first one is appreciation. Whoa. You mean people care about being cared about? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like people want to be appreciated. They want to be known, or they want to have praise, and not in some arrogant way, but you want praise when you do really well, when you come to these places of result. So appreciation was a massive one. The second one is ability to grow or perceived ability to grow. Okay, that one's pretty important when I come to my answer here in a second. And then the last one is culture and communication. Okay, and those are really one and the same in a lot of ways because your environment and the way you work through that environment, that's that's that communication piece. So we were like, okay, let's just focus on those three pieces. To answer your question, I think the answer of like where's the best place to start, I think you've got to start with the clarity in your vision. People don't know where you're going or what you're doing, they're not going to know if they connect. They're not going to know
That's right.
if they fit into this. So if you're a farmer and you just say, "Hey, I'm hiring," and they say, "What do you do?" and you say, "Don't worry about it. Come on over." I know that's like over the top saying it. That's not far from the truth about way businesses usually are. They don't want to go deep into it because, well, now I got to explain everything about this. Yeah, and that's a good thing because you want people who fit that thing. And you apparently haven't been good at finding that thing. So why not, in the first part, share vision, share direction? That's in our cultural interviews when we hire people, we bring them in. And we usually have, and by the way, most people have a hard time getting anyone in the door in construction. When we are like, hey, I think we need a cultural interview, we'll have 10 people easy. Like, send out an email, we're doing it this Friday, and they show up, which is unbelievable with millennials and Gen Zs, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So that'll happen. And then we just talk about what we're about, who, and not like what we do. I don't even talk about that at all. I talk about what we're about. Here's what we're about. We're about cultivating others into this industry. We're about building
That's good.
opportunities for people to go do the thing. Like, if we're commercial construction, commercial electrical, we power people's ability to create dreams. That's what we do. And so that's the vision I want to preach into anybody who's going to be a part of my organization. Anybody who's going to be a part of their team needs to know, man, we're powering opportunities for people to create, to develop, to succeed. That's what we're about. So when you can start there with the vision, you'll grab their heart. Okay. The next place is support and development. We want to show them how it's going to look for them coming into our team. We talk about our culture. We talk about, what does it look like to be a day here? And we also tell you, like, we're not looking for electricians. We're looking for good people, and we'll teach you that. So then we'll throw them into a boot camp is what we call it. It's 2 weeks of us just teaching, training, developing. And yeah, we're looking for fit during that time, making sure people connect to it. But I think you've got to have clarity in the vision. You got to have clarity in how you're going to support and develop them and show them. Don't just say it's there. That's our problem with growth a lot of times. When people are like, I just couldn't grow there. I don't think that's true. I think they could have grown there, but nobody told them how or what it looked like to grow there. And so, what does growth look like? What's the natural progression? How long does it take? You wonder why millennials think they deserve X amount of dollars right after they get out of college and they learn something, because they equate learning with the how to do something and doing something once as having the ability. Why would I do it a million times to prove I already know how to do it? But if you show someone, hey, part of experience is time though. It is repetition, and it is making sure you do like I can learn how to do a kick flip on a skateboard, and if I
Yeah.
can do
I
it,
want to
that's
see that
cool.
later.
No, I can't do it.
Okay.
But if I did it, I'm saying what if. Come on, man. I'm completely. If I learned how to do a kickflip and I did it once, I would not be like, I'm the kickflip master, right? That's but we haven't shown that part of it is, okay, well, now I need to learn all the little things. Part of grinding is not just doing something over and over like for no reason at all.
It's
It's
continuous.
crafting. It's
Yeah.
making it better. Oh, I'll move my foot this way now. Yeah, I'm speaking like kickflips like I know. I'll move my foot here and change my weight, and it's one of those things that
Yeah. You're right.
we don't show people how to grow.
Hmm.
And we are in the most unparented generations that we've ever been in. And part of our job in creating a good culture and creating opportunity and developing like this opportunity for them to grow is, and you're going to hate this, it's be a parent.
Yeah.
Okay. It's help develop boys and girls to become men and women.
Hmm.
And when you can create and cultivate that, I will say confidently that I think millennials and Gen Zs are the most loyal generation.
Yeah. I think you're right.
Generations. Not, I mean, will they leave at the drop of a hat? Yeah. But when you actually give clarity on vision, you give clarity on support and development, and you give clarity on accountability and clear metrics of what success looks like and growth looks like,
Yeah.
you're developing. And people will not walk away from development easy. Okay.
Mhm.
Because they see, wow, this
You care.
person actually cares for me.
Yeah. You
That's
care.
deep.
Yeah. I love that. I think too many times leaders of organizations don't want to have to develop the person because they're more concerned about the product than they are their people. But what we're learning in the modern age is with this culture piece is that the people you have to care more about the people or your product will suffer,
Mm,
right?
mm,
So those are great three places to start looking at. So my last question is the most practical of all.
yeah.
Give us one thing that I can do today to make my culture within my team better than it was yesterday.
Mm. Um, I've got two practical ones.
That's
If
fine.
can I give? Can I? No, it's not one. I'm
I
sorry.
know you can give one, and then we'll call the other one a bonus.
Okay. The first one, honestly, and it's super simple, but um, it, it's really both of them are about a litmus test. Okay, because I think like nobody's going to out culture the leader, right? Like nobody's going to believe in what's happening more than that person. So I think this is very top down, right? Like you've got to go to that place where you're getting curious. First thing I would say is if you're worried that like you don't have a culture that supports and is really taking care of people, or if you believe you do, then do this. Go up and give someone an authentic compliment. Okay,
Hmm.
just go up and give them a really authentic compliment.
It's so
If
simple.
they blush and don't know what to do with that, you might not have a culture that does that very well. Okay. It's probably not very normal to hear that. And it's not in the world because we get so focused on everything we're doing. Doesn't mean you don't care about people and your culture's a horrible culture. Like, bring it low. We're okay. Part
Just
of
means it
getting better is
hasn't been
progression.
normalized. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But when we have a culture that people feel appreciated, you'll say that stuff and the response will be, ah, thanks. Thanks. And so that's one thing. The second part to that could take you is having cultural feedback loops. Okay,
Yeah.
so these are things we do every 90 days. The focus is we ask questions about culture. And we don't say how's the culture? They don't Nobody's going to understand that.
Yeah.
Like on a scale of 1 to 10, how's the culture? Like no, like ask questions you don't want to know the answers to. Okay?
Specific.
Oh, very specific. So let's what are we doing right now that's missing the mark? What
Hmm.
ways are we not serving our customer? That one sounds very focused on the business, but it's not, you
Hmm.
know. Um, what's one way you've been supported by your direct person above you? What's one way you've been supported by them recently?
Yeah.
What's one way that you feel like they've missed the mark? Like and start developing all of these questions and then just send it out to your team.
Yeah.
And maybe not everybody will come back. I stay away from vague questions, okay? Make it really simple to answer. If you ask these things in person, I would say watch for the pause. Okay. So as you're talking to someone and be like, because you can do this naturally too. Like I'd be like, hey, Dustin, things, hope things are going well. What's an area that you think we're missing it on? And if they quickly are like, yeah, I don't think anything. Like, okay, good. But if they're like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
dig
There's
in,
something there.
excavate. Like
Yeah.
you want them thinking. You want them to
Hmm.
think through, yeah, there is something off here and we need to talk about it.
Yeah.
So you want your culture to grow the best, then you're gonna have to work it hard. You're gonna have to go into the field, remove the rocks. You're gonna have to get teammates who are like, yeah, we want the best produce. So let's spend time tilling the soil. And you're gonna have to do, I mean, it's not easy. Okay. They're simple things. It's just that common sense isn't always common action. Okay.
Mm.
And so when we can get to a place that we're doing these things and we're getting into these cultural feedback loops because we care, not because we want our ego stroked, and tell people that like, hey, I don't want you to give me what I want to hear right now. I want you to be honest because for us to be successful, we got to have truth here and we got to have the best product. So, yeah, I think
Yeah.
those are a couple things. The one
That's a
with the bonus, of course.
Yeah, that's a great answer. What I want to highlight there was something that was kind of unspoken, that Blake shared with us there. Something that I say, or that I've heard before, and I often repeat, is that great leaders ask great questions.
Mm,
And you don't have to be up at the top of your org chart to be a leader. You can lead from the bottom up. So here's what I think. Here's what I think I would add to that practicality that Blake just gave you, is obsess over asking great questions.
that's good. Mm,
Obsess over asking great questions. Every time you think, man, I would really love to know what our team thinks about X, or I would really love to have this conversation or excavate, like Blake said in the construction analogy. I'd love to excavate this kind of culture topic with our team right now.
Yeah.
It is highly revolved around you asking great questions, because you can ask some really simple questions that have a non-simple answer, which is great. And don't, I say don't overthink it, but I would obsess a bit over getting the right question. And when you first start this, you're gonna kind of fumble through it, and you're gonna
Mhm.
ask some questions, and people are just gonna answer with a yes or a no, and you're gonna have to ask them to expound on it. And the vulnerability that comes with that takes time. You can't enter this conversation or send out your first questionnaire and
Yep.
expect amazing results. But
Yep.
the more you do it, just like anything else, it comes with reps. And so just begin to obsess with asking great questions is something that I learned a couple of years ago that I've just been thinking a lot about especially when it comes to team culture. So
Yeah.
I love talking to Blake because he always makes me feel like I could run through a brick wall. He always makes me feel like I'm just ready to go do this thing. And what I also love about Blake is that we've had conversations on all 5 of the topics that I addressed here on the website. We've talked about mental health. We talk a ton about Enneagram, creativity. We've already talked about how we were kind of in the trenches together on that. Culture, obviously, here, and then process. Blake is a process guy, and I love his processes, and I learned so much from him. So don't be surprised if you see Blake back on here and I'm asking him questions about one of those other 5 topics, because I just enjoy hearing from him and all that. If you want more of uh, what you heard Blake talk about today, I do want to share his website. Simple, BlakeBehr.com. Bear like the paint, right? Cool. Bear like the paint, not bear like the animal. BlakeBehr.com. And then he mentioned earlier in the beginning of the show that he has written a book. You can buy it on Amazon and anywhere else. It's called Uncultured: The Key to Prevent Your Team from Self-Destructing. I highly encourage y'all to pick that up too. It's a great resource to kind of have in your back pocket, or if you're like me, I would just leave it on your desk so that you remember every day that this is something that you need to be talking about and addressing. So, Blake,
Good.
thanks so much for your time, man. That was super
Yeah.
fun. We will definitely have you back on because there's so much more that we can cover.
Mm.
But again, thanks for being a part of it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thank you all so much for watching. You can find everything that we're doing at dustinp.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, I would love for you to subscribe, like this video, ring the bell. All that helps us kind of carry this conversation forward as we're learning to just how do we get these conversations out there. So I would love for you to do that. There's a newsletter that you can subscribe to as well. You can find all of that at dustinp.com. Until then, we'll see you next time on 5 Questions With.